Welcome back for what I believe is going to be part 3 of a 3-part series. If you're just checking in here, there should be a disassembly and a cleaning and prep video before this one too. So if you're new, check those out. Also, thank you for stopping by. Really appreciate it when people show up, leave a comment, throw a like. Of course, I'd love to have everybody as a subscriber if they enjoyed the video. Before I get too excited about anything else, I'm going to try a trial fitment with the new manifold to see how it's going to work out with the exhaust still actually hung up, and see if it's even feasible to get it in that way. So let's give it a shot and see what happens. What do you guys think? Looks like it goes into me. What we're about to do now is the final prep on this surface. I'm just going to take some brake clean on a rag and just wipe it down, and then I'm going to get my gasket prepped. Staying with the theme of trying to do everything possible to make sure this thing is sealed well, I bought some copper gasket prep. I've seen Sloppy Mechanics. If you guys don't know him, you should check him out just as soon as you watch every video on my channel first. I've seen him use this stuff to reuse factory LS gaskets like 5 or 6 times. Like, take heads off, spray them with this stuff, slam the same gaskets back in, and off he goes. So with a new gasket that is the highest quality gasket I could find, I'm using a Victor Reyes, I'm not sure, gasket. It's what everybody says to use on these things. It's a MLS gasket, so it's a multi-layer steel gasket, but they take that pretty liberally. In this case, it's just 2 layers. I've used MLS gaskets before that are like 100 layers, but anyway, I'm going to hit it with this stuff before I install it, and I'm kind of curious about what to do, because the can here only says to spray it and let it sit until the solvent evaporates. Well, I sprayed some of this on a cardboard box and it stays sticky forever, but I don't know if you actually want to let it dry so it isn't sticky at all, or I don't know. So, and it also says to spray both sides of it. And with this type of gasket, it's going to be a lot of fun to try and shoot both sides of it and get it installed all at the same time without screwing anything up. So we're going to try and make the best of that and see what happens. I think I'm just going to like dangle it on a screwdriver and hold it that way for a couple minutes and then try and slap it in, I guess. If you are just joining us, I've got my hardware all ready to go. It's 316 stainless bolts, got my washers all painted up, put on them. Holes are all already anti-seized, all that good stuff. So yeah, I don't think there's much more to it than to do at this point. So let's get at it. Alright, so now I'm just going to give the intake and the new exhaust manifold down there the same treatment, and then we'll be ready to spray that gasket up. I'm probably not really going to be able to film that, so next time you see me, I'll probably be trying to quickly and gently slam all this stuff back on before that gasket stuff sets up or whatever it does. So I ran into a little problem here. This is the donut gasket that came with this Dorman manifold, and it just did not want to go on. So I tried to not so gently persuade it to go on with a block of wood and a hammer, and just straight up destroyed it. If I'd have been thinking, I would have probably bought a higher quality version of this. Maybe this one is out of dimension. The tube itself doesn't really have like a burr on it, but you can maybe feel, maybe you guys can even see, it feels like maybe there's a slight round at the end. So I'm going to go to around this with a die grinder and give that a little chamfer. So hopefully a new one will go back on. New guys to those locally are like 12 bucks, and I can order it from Amazon for 8. So that is what we're going to do, and it'll be here tomorrow afternoon, free shipping, which is cool. something you guys don't know is that the only torque wrench I own that'll go down low enough to torque the manifold bolts on this thing is a beam wrench. And I covered a beam wrenches, I think in TBL 3, would be the third export video. So it's not a clicker wrench, it's just got a beam that deflects, and you have to like watch it do that. And there's no way I'm going to be able to watch that wrench when I'm torquing the bolts down for this thing. I'll be at some weird angle underneath it and everything else. So I actually ordered a really nice USA made 3/8 drive clicker wrench that's actually supposed to be here tomorrow as well. I didn't actually intend to have today to get this much work done. So that's all actually going to work out fine. So I'm going to get that guy chamfered up, and then that's going to be it for the moment for me, but for you it'll just be a couple minutes. And that is totally what I should have done from the start. You see, I just put a nice little round over on it, and this guy of course is all deformed, but it didn't fit well before either. I mean, even after it was deformed it still didn't go on nice, but it goes on real smooth now. So yeah, impatience is probably what got me there, but all the same, you know, who knows what quality this is. I don't want to be in here again in 2 weeks. And all I did was just put a 220 disc on the die grinder, which is because 220 is what I had. And that's it. A couple minutes later, we're ready to whirl. So we'll get back to it tomorrow, or for you, right now. We got our freshie. Let's get it out of there and see if it fits this flange a little better now that I put that chamfer on it. And this one doesn't seem to have like that goofy like wire core or whatever that the old one had. And this one's also oddly a lot lighter. But anyway, we'll see. Oh yeah, perfect. Absolutely perfect. That's what we want. So now what I'm probably going to do is just take a little bit of painter's tape just to hold that on so it doesn't try and fall off during reassembly, and we'll be good. So I did some more research on this stuff, and hilariously Permatex has a YouTube video of how to use this, and all it says in the video is exactly what it says on the can. Apply it and wait for the solvents to evaporate. It's like that's so vague that it's not helpful. So I did a little more research, and it sounds like you spray this stuff on a gasket and then give it like 10 or 15 minutes to cure out some. And from my test earlier on that cardboard box, it'll still be sticky at that point, so this is not the type of thing where you want to put it on and then let it dry. The interesting part of that is I'm not sure what you're supposed to do with it for 15 minutes or whatever while it's, you know, curing, because you can't lay it down on anything. So I am going to attempt to coat both sides of it, and then just hang it up in the vise there by that screwdriver, and we'll see how that goes. I'm going to get my paper towels back out of there, wipe down the head again just to be sure. Actually, before we get too carried away with anything, I told you guys I needed to get a new torque wrench. Here it is. This is a Proto, if you were curious. At a later time I might talk about torque wrenches and why I chose Proto or whatever. But anyway, the first thing I'm going to do is just test it and make sure the freaking thing actually clicks. Because I've actually run into issues before with like other new torque wrenches where they were just such junk that you know, they didn't work right out of the box. And I also want to get a feel for how it clicks before I start you know, doing stuff wrong. I've got it set for 26 foot-pounds, and I'm using one of the old manifold bolts, so it's got that glue on it, so I'm compressing that glue right now. That feels like a lot of torque. I don't know. It definitely feels like a lot of torque. Boy. There it goes. Okay. Feels pretty good. Nice affirmative click. I'm going to go get my beam wrench and see if that actually comes up the same. This is a beam style torque wrench. That's what I was trying to explain to you before. When you move it, this shaft deflects, but this one stays stationary because it's not connected. So the issue with this is I'm not going to be able to read this scale while I'm torquing stuff, or I doubt it. So let's just see where this guy comes up. Okay, it just started to move. So yeah, looks like our new guy is right on target. I may break this loose and try it a couple more times just to make sure it's repeatable, but that's just for my own peace of mind. Yep, that all went fine. Came up on torque twice. Fun fact about beam wrenches is these actually work in both directions. So I've already done this before, but now I'm going to start backing it off, and we should be able to watch that come back around. So yeah, there you go. It's just starting to yield at like 24 or so in reverse. So that's cool. That's completely fine. Something else that's kind of neat about these, and I talked about this when I first got the beam wrench out for doing the spark plugs in my Escort, is that you can actually watch this scale, and it'll show you as things are starting to yield. And that's why I like using these to do stuff in aluminum. And I'll see if I can capture that. Start backing this guy off. So there it is, and now it's just starting to come back down the scale. If you are tightening something, when you start to see that happen, you know you're starting to pull thread, so stop immediately. You know, it's probably already too late by then, but at least you're not gonna break off a bolt or something. So that's just something that's kind of handy about these. And again, I may actually do a torque wrench video in the future. There's a lot of cool stuff to talk about. And there it is. I think I'm just gonna give it about 10 minutes to set up, because it's going to take me a while to actually get this manifold on and torqued down. At the same time, I want it to be a lot less tacky than it is now. So I think it's go time. Let's start wrangling the Wrangler back together. I'm just going to get the new gasket and get it started in those studs and try and just get it pushed back against the head. Then I'm going to drop the exhaust manifold in and get the bolts for it started up and get them backed out and everything, so the intake can then slide in, because the intake just slides off those bolts. I don't think I made that clear earlier, but yeah, ready to go. Okay, I'm just gonna look under it quick, probably just with a flashlight and a mirror, and just make sure all those washers on the bottom of those bolts are all pulled back. That's why the factory glued them together, so they stay out of the way in intake. So I want to make sure, you know, all the washers are toward this side. So everything is where it's supposed to be. I've got all the top ones just snugged up. The torque wrench may be kind of a forlorn hope. We're just gonna have to see how this goes. But anyway, now I'm gonna try the bottom ones with the 1/4-inch drive extension arrangement I used to take them off, and we'll see if we can actually get all those from the top. It'll be pretty cool if we can. Well, the front two bottom ones, yes, and the rear two, no. So I'm gonna have to get under it to do the rear two. And then I'm going to probably come up and actually torque the center exhaust and then the two next to it, and then get under the bottom and do the center two, torque them, and then keep going. I don't know if the torque wrench is actually going to fit or not, but we'll find out. So I've run into a little bit of a problem here. You can see one of the manifold bolts right there. They don't seem to want to draw down even and get the intake and the exhaust at the same time. The washers were like cocking. So what I did is I backed off all the bolts on the top, and I'm going to try and snug these bottom ones first and see if it kind of draws them in. It's pretty dramatic. It's like a 1/4 inch of height difference. So I'll try and snug them up and we'll see what happens. I figured out what's going on. I'll try and see if I can replicate it for you guys. What we're watching is the intake manifold there. It's down right now, and that's kind of as far as I can push it in. You can see it's still not up against the gasket. And if I pick it up a little bit, it'll go right home. Yeah, now it'll go right home. I believe the issue, yeah, there it is. I believe the issue was there are dowels that intake sits on that are in the head, and the end of a dowel is chamfered, so it's got a flared edge all the way around it. I think the intake was actually caught up like halfway on that chamfer and not at the top of the dowel where it's supposed to be. So basically I had this thing running uphill on that dowel chamfer instead of on top of it, so it was a little bit low and it was trying to grind up that chamfer. So who knows, if I'd have kept tightening it might have made it. But anyway, I think I took care of it. I'm probably the only guy in the world that's ever going to run into this problem, but if not. So sure enough, I can't get the new torque wrench in there, which is okay, because I can read the beam wrench on the top, and the new torque wrench, the head, also wouldn't clear the intake. Again, you've probably heard me say it a couple times, it's why it's great to be a tool hoarder. Another thing is, you know, this doesn't have a ratchet on the end of it, which is why it fits, and I've got a 12-point socket on it, so I have twice as many divisions on the circle to be able to get this thing in and actually have space to use it. So it hits the, I think that's a fuel regulator, or I don't know. Anyway, so we are just gonna put the torque on it. Into the regulator. Okay. Oh, looks pretty good. Can I get that lucky on all the other ones? Yes, yes I can. Cool. So I am going to go down through, and I'll probably, the next two I'll do will probably be the bottom center two, and just work from inside to out. And those, at least the forward one, I think I can do from the top. So we'll see. You guys probably couldn't see all of that because frankly I couldn't see some of it. Since my torque wrench game is extra hard, I managed to get a torque wrench on every single one twice. So they are all at 25 to 26, I'd say, torqued, guaranteed. So the next thing for me to do now is reconnect the exhaust collector which really isn't such a big deal. I probably won't even show you. I do have stainless fasteners for that too. Just one thing to note there is I'm going to anti-seize them just so they don't gall. If they gall, they gall, which means when I go to take it apart, they'll just break in half, which is actually better than having to cut them in half. And then we're on to reconnecting the wiring and the hoses and all that good stuff. But yeah, between the new clicker wrench and the old school beam wrench, managed to put a torque wrench on every single one of those. If your torque wrench game is weak, that is okay. I promise you that there are at least hundreds of thousands of TJs out there that have never had a torque wrench put on those bolts, and they're all fine. It's something I like to do for stuff like this because I usually have a pretty well calibrated hand, but I don't want to over crush this MLS gasket. I don't know if I explained that. It's multiple layer steel. You can see it. There's actually 2 layers right there. There's a profile stamped in it and everything, and I don't want to, deform that profile more than it ought to be or anything like that. That's why I use the torque wrench. You can do as you please or what you have tools for. But yeah, it worked out for me. I'll get that collector taken care of, and then that should be what I'm going to call the last of the real pain in the ass stuff. This is all pretty straightforward stuff up here. So that segment of the disaster is behind me. One thing I did want to show you guys to make sure that I show you thoroughly, I think maybe I mentioned it before, but these are serrated lock nuts that I used on the collector down where the rest of the exhaust attaches to the manifold. These worked out exactly like I hoped they would. First of all, these are a self-locking fastener because of those serrations. Second, they've got more surface area because they've got that flange on them, and I'm not sure if the stock ones did or not, but the big helpful thing is that once these are just slightly more than finger tight, they don't turn anymore as you tighten the nut into them. They stay stationary. So then you can just use one wrench on the other side to tighten them down. And those things are a pain to get to, so anything helps. So yeah, I suggest you pick up some of those if you're doing the collector bolts. It'll make your life a little bit easier. I just happened to notice I have a handy reference available. The Dorman kit came with new flange bolts, but you can see they are not the serrated ones. So make sure you get those if you're going to go get some. So that's the end of the heavy lifting here, I think. Now I just have to plug in wire harnesses and vacuum lines and all that stuff. And you guys saw where all that stuff came apart in part 1. So I don't see a need to bore you with any of that unless something interesting should happen to come up. One thing I am going to mention, I mentioned this in the Escort videos, I've taken to spraying like down-in electrical connectors, or more expressly like on the O-ring portion up inside the connector with this silicone spray. It doesn't have to be this spray. I imagine any spray silicone will do. It just helps lubricate them. It's a tip I stole from the Car Wizard. If you've been watching Hoovie's Garage or the Car Wizard's channel now, you've seen him mention that. So as I put this stuff back together, I'm just going to give everything just a little nip of lubricant, just to help all these old connectors stay happy. We got Saddington supervising still. Anyway, be back with you. Well, there she be, guys. I don't believe she's any worse for wear. I think everything's back where it's supposed to go. The only reassembly issues I had at all were I didn't really remember how this wire harness down here routed. And I think I got it right. If you guys haven't noticed, I take videos of all this stuff. So I did go back and review some earlier portions of the videos to make sure I got it all right. So there it is, with the exception of the serpentine belt. And that brings up something that sucks for me and pretty much doesn't make a difference for you, is the next thing I need to do is replace the alternator on this thing. So, since the belt and everything's off already, that is what I'm going to be doing. It's right down yonder. So in YouTube chronological time, you guys are actually going to hear this thing run without an exhaust leak, which is something I have never heard. I bought this thing with a broken header. But in YouTube time, you're going to hear it without an exhaust leak before I am. So, it's one of those things, right? Well, it's a moment of truth. I'm going to cycle the key a couple times to see if we build up some fuel pressure. And I'll probably go out there and just take a look at the fuel rail, make sure we don't spray gas everywhere. Okay. Alright, let's look at the rail. Don't see any signs of problems. Don't know if there's gas in it yet or not. I don't think this thing runs a return system, so it may have to purge air for a while. This thing's quiet. I forgot to hit record on the camera, so I don't know if you guys saw the WD-40 smoke and stuff burning off, but yeah, this thing's never been this quiet. You've never been able to hear the injectors before. You certainly can now. That's real nice. Oh, there we go. A whole bunch more smoke now. Yeah, that's probably, yeah, it smells like WD-40 and anti-seize. I'm sure that copper will seed in too. Let's take a look at the dash, make sure everything's still cool. Yep, everything looks just like it should. And good God, it's hot out here. I just started this thing probably 3 minutes ago. It's already up to like a 150 coolant temp. Just for fun, let's go out back and see how the exhaust sounds. The rest of the exhaust is still stock. It needs replaced. I don't know how well you guys will be able to hear it on camera. That's like ludicrously quiet. This thing's never sounded like that. It's also running a lot smoother already. You can feel it's got just maybe a little bit of a misfire. I think next time on the agenda is going to be a tune-up anyway. So we'll address all that then. Yeah, that smells like gas. I got a feeling it probably hasn't lit the factory cat off correctly in quite some time. Well, everything's still going good. I think I'm going to try and record some audio without the microphone I usually use and see if my phone will actually pick up how quiet this thing is, or maybe better than the mic. Yeah, she's doing really good. Now that it's getting warm, the thermostat just came open. It's got a I think 180 degree thermostat in it right now, so the coolant temp is actually dropping. But anyway, oh, and ignore this. If you know TJs, you know why that's that way. I can hear it misfiring a little bit, and I'm sure that's because the plugs are ultra fouled up from years of cracked manifold. But all the same, the shifter is just barely wiggling. Before, this thing would bounce around like a 1/4 inch, and I can hear it backfiring, or not backfiring, just misfiring through the exhaust a little bit, and feel it a little in the Jeep. It's much better than it used to be, and that I think it's going to get warm enough to light off the cat for the first time in ages. And I'm not real worried about that. I told you guys before I have a new cat for it, knowing that this was, that was likely going to be an issue. Plus, the whole exhaust under it's pretty rusty. I can actually like hear the rust hole in the muffler right now. Actually sounds kind of cool, but this thing's loud enough going down the road as it is. So, but yeah, that's like 1500 RPM. Try and get it right on 15. And you can hear it misfire just a tiny little bit, and you can probably see the shifter wiggle just a touch. But I imagine that would probably clean up if I left these plugs alone, but they've been in there forever already anyhow. So we're going to do a cap and rotor and plug wires and oil change and all kinds of good stuff on this thing soon. But anyway, I think that is going to conclude part 3 of the manifold replacement, unless something real bad happens. What I'm going to do is let this thing continue to warm up for a while and just get hot and hopefully burn any excess oil or anything off the manifold. I'm going to let it cool down. I'm going to retorque the manifolds, and then I will probably heat cycle it again and do the same thing. And then we're gonna move on with the tune-up. So I want to thank you guys again for stopping by. If you're new here, I would love to have you as a subscriber. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask. I'm not an expert of Jeeps or of anything really, but I'll help as much as I possibly can. What do you mean you don't get drop shipments of brake clean by the case? Pro tip. This is now what Walmart is selling on their website for $2 a can. It looks like the case amount is 12. So unless you want a boatload of packing peanuts, make sure you order them in multiples of 12. This is Saddington Bear. He's our channel mascot and project supervisor, and he would like you to know I try to make a project video every week. You might be interested in some of these other videos. Take a look and let me know what you think. Thanks again for watching. Really appreciate it.